Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're talking about the ghost of an automaker. I mean, a company that was born from fighter jets, adored by this fiercely loyal following, and then, poof, it just disappeared. We're talking, of course, about Saab.
It's a really fascinating question. Saab hasn't built a new car in over a decade. Yet if you talk to one of its fans, they're some of the most passionate people in the entire car world. So what was it? What made these cars so darn special? What was that core Saabness that inspires so much loyalty? To understand that, we actually have to look to the skies.
Right, so Saab's story doesn't begin on the road like pretty much every other car company. It starts in the sky. The company's DNA, its whole way of thinking, it wasn't an automotive engineering, it was an aviation. And that one simple fact, well, that's the key to understanding everything that came after. So the company's origin story is just pure ingenuity. It started as this clever way for German engineers to get around post-World War I restrictions on building aircraft. You fast forward through a merger and a whole world war, and now Saab is this proud Swedish company building fighter jets. But, with peace comes a problem. Nobody really needs bombers anymore. So what do you do with a factory full of brilliant aeronautical engineers? You tell them, hey, go build a car. And just think about who they put in charge of this whole project. The team, led by a guy named Gunnar Lundström, had 16 aviation engineers. These guys were experts in aerodynamics, but they knew next to nothing about cars. In fact, and this is my favorite part, only 2 people on the entire team even had a driver's license.
Lundström's whole philosophy was crystal clear, and honestly, it would define Saab for decades. It was function over form, efficiency above everything. Aesthetics, a very distant third. They were not trying to build a pretty car, they were trying to solve an engineering problem with the only tools they knew.
And the result of all that thinking was this, the Saab 92. It was shaped in a wind tunnel, so it looked kind of like a teardrop, or, an airplane's wing. It achieved a drag coefficient of 0.30, which was a world-class figure back then, and is still really respectable today. This wasn't just a car, it was basically a land-bound aircraft.
So Saab got this reputation as this quirky engineering-first brand. But then, in the 1960s and 70s, it really entered its golden age. It started proving that its strange designs weren't just efficient, they were total world beaters. Okay, picture this. It's 1962, on the snowy, absolutely treacherous roads of the Monte Carlo Rally. You've got this legendary driver, Erik Carlsson. They called him Carlsson on the roof because he had a bit of a habit of rolling his car. He's behind the wheel of a little Saab 96. Now, on paper, this thing was completely outmatched by the big, powerful Mercedes sedans. But its front-wheel drive grip and super nimble handling let Carlsson just dance through the icy corners. He secured this legendary victory and totally cemented Saab's reputation as the ultimate underdog. But rally wins weren't Saab's only claim to fame. Oh no, they became totally synonymous with one piece of technology that completely changed the idea of performance for a normal family car, the turbocharger. Now, other brands like Porsche and BMW, they were using turbos for raw, top-end speed in their super expensive sports cars. But Saab's philosophy was completely revolutionary. They saw the turbo not as a performance tool, but as a tool for safety and efficiency. It allowed a small engine to punch way above its weight, giving you a surge of power for real-world driving, like merging onto a highway or passing a truck. It was all about smart, on-demand power.
So, despite all its engineering brilliance, its rally wins, and this devoted cult following, Saab's obsessive commitment to quality and innovation, well, it came at a really steep price, and that's what led them into the arms of a giant.
You see, Saab's whole mantra was that their cars were built to a standard, not to a price. And while that created some incredibly well-made cars, it was a terrible business model. They were over-engineering absolutely everything, spending a fortune on development, and they just couldn't sell enough of them to make a profit. The company was bleeding money.
This whole situation led to one of Saab's last great acts of defiance. The head of Saab USA, a guy named Bob Sinclair, he pitched an idea to save the brand, a convertible. Well, the Swedish executives were horrified. A flashy convertible went against their whole practical, all-weather vibe. So, undeterred, Sinclair secretly used his advertising budget to build a prototype. And when it debuted, it was a sensation, a massive sales success that pretty much single-handedly kept the company afloat.
But one hit car wasn't going to be enough to solve the deep financial problems. So in 1989, a struggling Saab sold a 50% stake to the American giant General Motors. And this set the stage for an epic culture clash. I mean, you had Saab, who obsessed over decade-long development cycles and safety stuff customers didn't even know they needed. And then you had GM, the master of the 2-year model refresh and building cars to a very, very specific budget. It was a total marriage of opposites. But the alliance that was supposed to save Saab, well, it would ultimately be its undoing. That financial stability they got came at the cost of the company's very soul.
The first signs of trouble showed up pretty fast. The so-called New Generation 900, which launched in 1993, looked like a Saab on the outside, but underneath it was based on the chassis of a pretty mundane GM Opel Vectra. To the loyal Saab purists, this was absolute heresy. That unique, quirky engineering was being swapped out for generic, cost-effective parts.
The brand's identity crisis really hit rock bottom in the 2000s. The Saab 92X, which became infamously known as the Saabaroo, was literally nothing more than a Subaru Impreza with a new grille and some badges. And then it got worse. The Saab 97X was just a thinly disguised Chevrolet Trailblazer SUV. GM was just slapping the Saab name on other companies' products, and it was completely watering down everything that made the brand unique. So after decades of clashing with GM's corporate culture, losing its engineering independence, and just never managing to turn a consistent profit, the end finally came. Saab got caught in the fallout of GM's own bankruptcy in 2009, and after a few failed rescue attempts, Saab Automobile filed for bankruptcy in December 2011. The company that was born from jets was permanently grounded.
And so the story of Saab comes to an end. It's a story of brilliant, stubborn engineers who just refuse to compromise. And it leaves us with this lingering question. In today's car industry, is there still room for a company that is so fiercely, so wonderfully individual? Or was Saab's demise just inevitable, a casualty in an industry that too often seems to value spreadsheets over soul?